Right. Welcome to today's 2nd of December weekly meeting. Today's we'll be talking in more depth about a proposal from the community for trade definitions for extending tokens. And let's give a background what this call is about for those who are here the first time. This call is all about SIPs. SIP stands for Stacks Improvement Proposal, and here we share ideas of how we can improve the blockchain through creating standards, whether it's consensus breaking or non-consensus breaking, and including things are not exactly blockchain, outside blockchain, like governance stuff too. So it's a pretty wide spectrum of stuff that you can get your teeth into. And here we can share idea, we can give feedback, we can collaborate, we can advocate for your own SIP or each other's SIP, and we can basically just help each other improve the Stacks blockchain together. Like I said, SIP stands for Stacks Improvement Proposal. So all the things are on GitHub. So the specs of each SIP, and you can find them on GitHub/SIP. You'll find it. And SIP 15, just for context, is Stacks 2.1. And yeah, so just to sort of give everybody an overview where everything is. So actually, we've moved loads of SIPs from accepted stage or recommended stage to activation in progress. So it's basically waiting for the vote to happen. Oh, hold on. So it's all being reviewed by steering committees, and it's being approved with the current SIP editors. So steering committee, for those who don't know, are made of 3 group of peoples, and each with their expert domain, such as governance, technical, and economics. And each SIP from now, depending on the SIP, should be reviewed by one of these panels, the relevant panels, so such as SIP 2.1, Stacks 2.1 upgrade. It was reviewed by economics, governance, and technical caps. And some SIP may only require to be approved by technical. So it all very depend on what type of SIP it is. And this week we have, or last week, SIP 13 also being ratified. So we just need to do just some paperwork on GitHub, but it's being ratified. It was at accepted stage and it was approved by a technical person, and all the criteria are met, and now it's ratified. And then we have SIP 20, 18, 19, 15, basically just waiting for Stacks 2.1 to go live. Then they will all be ratified. And just to highlight, there are a lot of ideas on the table. So I think one of my goal would be to facilitate these ideas from becoming a draft to getting accepted and then getting reviewed in the next coming weeks and months. And yeah, congratulations on SIP 13 being ratified. So it's basically approved and signed off by everybody. Thanks to Bryce for reviewing this SIP, and thanks to Marvin for proposing this SIP idea. It's SIP 13 semi-fungible token, which can be used in a lot of gaming scenarios. So maybe one week we'll invite Marvin to speak more in depth about this and see how we can amplify so that the community can start adopting this a little bit more. And we have a few things from the GitHub issues to do with BTC transfers, transactions. I'll try and get Mark to come on and talk about it a little bit more. And this is not a SIP, but I'm sort of using this forum to highlight it to everyone that people can, this is like one of the many ways that people can contribute towards any improvements on Stacks, whether it's SIP or not. And this one happened to be not a SIP, but you can still participate in the conversation about and help stacks to shape this idea about just using your BNS, and then you can transfer Bitcoin. Yeah. So just to sort of open the floor up to see if there's anything people want to talk about, raise before we go into the main topic. Okay, right. So yeah, that's okay. Sorry, one more thing. We'll give people a little bit quick updates on the status of 2.1. So we're basically voting 2.1, and you can vote via two websites. If you haven't voted, please do. One website, you can vote if you're a stacker, whether you are solo stacking or stacking in a pool. But the criteria is you must be stacking over cycle 46 and 47 in order for your vote to be valid. So that's one method. If you're not stacking at all, we still want to hear your voice. Therefore, we create a website to capture the non-stacking folks. And it's based on snapshot voting. And you can just go to this website and enter sort of the voting power you wish to exercise and vote. It's pretty simple. And a bit of overall status. We already had like hundreds of votes so far. And overwhelming majority are in favor of Stacks 2.1. So it's really great to see the turnout this year. Last year we had 28 sort of votes from addresses, one of which represent 135 votes. So I think overall as an ecosystem, we have probably like more than doubled the votes since last year. So it's really great to see the participation from this year. So thanks everyone. Yeah, Jason, do you want to talk a little bit more about the tabulation progress?
Yeah, I can cover a little bit on that. We have 3 different approaches that are being taken by 3 different people, so we'll have independent results. And so far, we've mostly got data together. We're just starting to compare and look at the numbers and make sure that we all come up with the same results. But early results are looking good. I mean, I think we can say it looks like we have passed the threshold for stack votes. And we're still waiting for that to be confirmed across all 3 different methods. But yeah, one of the things that I am just kind of in love with the approach that I took is I was able to run an indexer, an API, and a website all through Cloudflare Workers. So the voting website that you see, there's an indexer in the background that also grabs the transaction data and does computations, and then an API that can serve that data to the website. So it's a really cool implementation, and I published it all open source. So if anybody wants to play with a new method for caching data, I definitely get in touch. I'd love to share a little bit of what I did there.
Cool. If anybody got any questions, please feel free to hit up Jason. And yeah, thanks for Jason's work. This year is a lot more complicated because we are sort of counting, we have various methods and various criteria. So yeah, thanks for Jason's work. Yeah, so to summarize, it's very simple to vote. So just click it, log in with your wallet, hit yes or no, send the transaction, and claim the badge. And the second method is also the same, like just basically connect your wallet, vote yes or no, send the transaction, and pick a badge and share it on your social. And it's amazing to see so many people are wearing that on their Twitter profile, including Munib and so many community members. I'm sure you can see around on Twitter. So yeah, amazing. And just want to sort of just something I spotted today. Also, I think people are also sort of feeling the community spirit, I think, by having this badge. Yeah, so I think it's turned out pretty well. So yeah, let's get into the main topic. So I will give the floor to Werner. He will share his screen and tell us about his idea.
Awesome, thank you, Aero. Let's see. Should be able to start it first. There. It's coming up. Don't worry. So can you see a bit of a PowerPoint slide now?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, I'll get into it. I'm currently providing support for the Hero wallet. I've been around the ecosystem in a actively basically since Stacks 2.0 launched. I've been enjoying just watching teams build, looking at their software, at the decentralized apps they build, and seeing how I can contribute or help test them. So for this particular SIP, I haven't written any clarity, but I just saw the questions from, for example, Friedger. You know, he put on GitHub the issue. Okay, we need a SIP for this, and it was about standards for. Looks like. Yeah, it's good. I'll get into a little bit of background, the current problem, the process thus far, and what should be next in my view. But basically what I saw is there are developments since the first two token standards were ratified. So that's SIP9 and SIP10. And those both predate the BNS contract, right? And BNS contract is, I think, the most used NFT contract on Stacks. And very early on, you know, I saw Friedger ask, you know, we should update the BNS contract so it's in line with SIP9, but that turned out to be harder than anticipated. So for the next BNS contract, which is now actually being discussed and being worked on, namely by Friedger again. So BNS v2, I want to make sure it's future proof, right? So before we can do that, I think we should have those additions that have been built to make transferable tokens either more safe or give them additional functionality. I think those should be standardized so they can be easily implemented in a BNS v2. This SIP, I know Hero is saying, okay, this is a BNS SIP, but it's not necessarily a BNS SIP. It's a SIP to extend all token contracts, right? So every SIP9 or SIP10 token can be extended in this way. And even the just ratified SIP13, the semi-fungible tokens. But I'm not sure about that, and that's where we have some open questions. I'll end with that later. So for my, in my view, the current problem is threefold. So if we have different function signatures, like Lucas, for example, identified on one of his GitHub issues, it's harder for marketplaces and decentralized apps to implement using those tokens. So if one token is implementing a slightly different marketplace trait, it means that a marketplace will have to adapt to every single situation that's a little bit different. So I think this is the general idea for having standards, right? So that's the reason I wish we have these standards, I think it will help, for example, in case of BNS names, to get a more wide adoption, if we can make sure that that such a SIP is ratified before we update the BNS contract. The process for me thus far, so I started with the marketplace trait because that's one of the things I found most useful for me personally. I like to, when I list an NFT I own, I don't like sending it to a contract from a marketplace. I don't want to send it to a escrow market contract. Or if I do that, at least let me deploy my own contract, for example, which is now being done with BNS names because of the limitation of one name per principal. So the Megapond contract implements the marketplace trait and the operable trait to make that possible. So you can list a token, but the token will remain in your wallet. You just set the price, and when it's bought by someone on the marketplace, you just get the token from your wallet is sent to the new owner, and you get the whatever tokens were paid for it. When I started with that, I discussed it with Friedke and some other people in the ecosystem, and they said, there's a couple more traits I think should be added to such a standard. So I've added those as well. And this is the basic outline. So there's 5 pieces to SIP 29, as I call it now. I have an explanation for that in my draft. It doesn't have an official number yet, but it's the transferable functions, the operable functions, the marketplace functions, commission functions, and the optional bulk transfer functions. So the idea is that if you want your tokens to adhere to the SIP 29 standard, you would implement 1 through 4, and optionally 5 if you want bulk transfer options or functions. The transferable trait is something that is in line with text 2.1 transfer stacks with a memo. I think maybe Friedke can help explain it a bit further. The operable function is basically a couple of functions that help, that would be part of a token contract, for example, and that make it possible for a marketplace, or basically allow a marketplace contract, for example, to transfer tokens on their behalf. For example, when you want to use these marketplace functions, you would have to allow it first. That certain marketplace contracts can do that. I hope I am explaining this correctly and as simply as possible, but feel free to ask questions and anybody can jump in to help.
But you basically mean delegating authority to the marketplace to be able to execute a transaction on your behalf.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So for me, number 3, the marketplace function, those are the most most concrete thing, I think, because it allows you to list your NFTs in a way that you don't have another party that is taking control of your NFT. You just have the contracts. Of course, you can still check that those are correct, and that's also a thing. I think something that will help if we have a standard for it. It'll be easier to verify that it's following the standard exactly, if it implies the SIP 29 trait. The commission function is another function that is useful for the marketplace, because then you can also define who gets a share of the sale. when an NFT is sold, and in what fractions. The bulk transfer function is taken from the SIP13 definition, so it's also copy pasted in here. That was also a suggestion made by one of the other developers. So it's basically, the SIP29 is basically a combination of functions that have been developed over time because of wishes from projects, or because it was possible and it would improve the overall experience for users, or it's safer for the user. So I'd love to get these into a standard so they can also improve other contracts in the future, and it's easy for other developers to know what to do exactly. So the next steps, in my view, is a couple of open questions to be answered. So is it possible to generalize the standard so it can be used for the semi-fungible tokens? I am not entirely sure. I do have some ideas, and I posted them in the initial discussion thread I made in the SIP repo. Another thing is, should this standard also include the safe transfer trait? I saw a mention about that in the link here, and it's also something that Friedrich suggested. I'd really like some help from the Clarity devs that wrote the initial contracts, such as Friedrich, Lucas, Mike, Dan, Jamil, Obsidian, and Marvin. The last four, they basically just helped comment and add additional feedback, and maybe even in the earlier process, which is not on GitHub, help check the safety of the contracts and the code. Then get the draft SIP to a point where it can be accepted. And I suggest the name SIP29, and then any subsequent token contract or SIPs that improve token functionality could end with a 9. That's just a suggestion. It could be helpful to keep track of token related standards in the future. All right, that's my story about this SIP to enhance tokens, basically. Are there any questions?
No questions, but I do want to say I like the idea of what you're going for here, because I know with City Coins, for example, we did implement send many functions. I mean, that was something that we wanted to include. We basically followed the same pattern that you see in the stack send many contract. And now, you know, there is a standard evolving that's going to be for multiple token transfers. So I think probably my biggest question when I'm looking at this as a SIP is like, do we imagine this as something that just defines all of the extensions for a SIP9, SIP10, or any token on the network, essentially, if we're including SFTs too? Or are these really just kind of individual standards that might evolve over time as well? So you'd have that SIP for the marketplace standard, a SIP for the, you know, like each individual one instead. I feel like the latter might work better with how the process works. But otherwise, I do think these could be useful things, because then it's like adding a plug and play option to something you're building. It's like, okay, I have a SIP9 token. Oh, I definitely want to do marketplace things. I definitely want to have commission built in, and you have a good place to grab those. So I do think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I understand the question. I actually had the same question, and it's also still an open question on the repo. So if we should really combine all these traits together, or should they be split up into separate SIPs? Now, for the operable trait and the commission trade and the marketplace trade, I think it makes a lot of sense to put them together because they need each other, basically. You can't have the marketplace trade without allowing a marketplace contract to operate it. I'm not so sure myself about the other one, or even the, for example, the optional bulk transfer that could easily be taken out and put in a separate SIP, of course, because it's already optional. Yeah. So that's a great question and something that could be discussed further. Yeah.
Okay, if anybody got any thoughts, please unmute and yeah, chime in anytime you want.
If you could just go back to, I had commented on the delegated authority thing. I think that was a few slides back.
Do you mean the operable trait?
It was something with the number 3. No, I think it was there.
Is it this?
Number 3, where number 3 was basically delegating authentication or delegating authority to a third party. Does that exist today in Stacks? That does, doesn't it? With your own wallet, right?
When you're talking about delegating stacks, for example, the stacks would remain in your wallet, but the earliest marketplaces, for example, or the earliest NFTs, they didn't allow non-custodial listing, so they would always be sent to a contract, to an escrow contract, basically. So they would be owned by the marketplace contract. Still, the marketplace wouldn't be just allowed to take things out, but it could operate all the NFTs in that contract. So it gives them a lot of power over the NFTs.
Centralized power. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. No, that was my question.
All right. I think we have, let's see if I can. I could open the, yeah, I'm not sure if this is the best form for it. I could open the SIP draft itself, but I don't think it's the best format to go over it. So these 5 points I have here, this is basically the structure I'm following, right? So in the draft SIP, I'll explain the functions one by one, and I try to do that in the same manner as the other SIPs I've seen, and with my knowledge of these traits. So that's also why I asked for some help from the original authors, because I think that'll help with explaining it in the best way. All right. Hero, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, sure. So I saw Fridger coming in and maybe he popped out. But yes, so yeah, definitely, like if anybody is familiar with this sort of area, like please feel free to comment on Werner's GitHub, which I put in the chat. And Werner, like who would be like the sort of the right person you would want to get, apart from the clarity depth? Like, do you need input from marketplaces, or do you think it's sort of at the state where it doesn't require marketplace input, or what sort of people?
For example, the commission trade, I've seen Jamil comment on that, and also people from other marketplaces. So I think they are they're basically in agreement about having such functions, and they're already using similar functions, right? So I don't think there's much discussion about that. I'd say they should definitely check out the draft SIP to see if the structure makes sense. But I think the code is good as it is. Except maybe for the open questions, right? For example, Mike also had an open question about the commission and using it for, I believe it was SFTs. I have to check.
And how can we sort of facilitate you with those open questions?
By discussing them, answering them in the topic I have on the SIP repo that we best to concentrate the further discussion there. We didn't have much discussion about semi-fungible tokens in the initial trade discussions. So I link to those also, but that's because they weren't a thing yet. So all this work is done mostly prior to the semi-fungible tokens. That's also, I think, why it's not hashed out exactly yet.
Okay, cool.
And I could ask the Alex team also to comment on that, because I know they are using the semi-fungible tokens, for example.
Yeah, I think I'll see if I can find some like people who are developing gaming stuff, whether that might be relevant to them, and maybe they can input their thoughts from a developer perspective, sort of builder perspective. Yep. Okay, great. And I would probably encourage you to put your latest work in the Stacks forum as well, just for visibility.
All right.
And I can help you sort of put that out on Twitter too.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Anybody else got any other thoughts? Please raise your hand. Okay. Otherwise, if you could stop the sharing, then I'll take over the screen.
Done.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Werner. This is one of the sort of many community SIPs that we would love to facilitate people. So we have more and more contributors from the community. So over the course of the next few months, I'll be putting in sort of the support system in place to help anybody who may have an idea, whether you're a developer or not, hopefully get through sort of the overall journey much easier, much more collaboratively. So yeah, so thank you so much, Werner. Love seeing this. Please continue to put out ideas that you can spot. Cool. Yeah, so just to give everybody a notice that next week, I'll be doing another 2.1 walkthrough in Discord server. The past few sessions in Discord server has been fairly good. So yeah, I'll keep doing that until the vote is over. So yeah, so that's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And yeah, see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.